Hi, we're the Never Ending Possibilities. Our group consists of Joanne Butler, Richard Hedrick, Leandra Moultrie, and Sebastian Munoz. The purpose of our presentation is to focus on the automotive industry on the production side and how companies can reduce emissions. To define our industry, our focus is reducing emissions by research and developing alternative technology in order to increase a positive impact on the environment and society. The first aspect we're going to focus on is the technology. The future is now, however, we're not quite there yet. We see future technology implemented into current day vehicles such as the hybrid. The hybrid is a combination between an internal combustion engine and a gas or an electric battery. Also, the electric vehicles are strictly battery powered. The hybrid vehicle, as I just said, is also referred to as a parallel vehicle where the user can switch between the gas platform and the electric platform on the fly. Hybrid vehicles are favorable for reduced emissions and reduced noise pollution. It has the best overall mileage on a vehicle per charge and for the fuel tank. Also is best for the efficient means of long distance travel. The electric vehicle is powered by strictly the battery and electricity, and it can be easily recharged by a plug-in adapter that can be implemented into your garage. Also, through regenerative braking, when your vehicle brakes, the energy gets transferred from the brake system into the electrical system, recharging the battery. Electric vehicles are favorable because they have the household plug-in station option, practical for everyday short trips and stop-and-go traffic. It's also cheap means of fueling, and also there's less dependency on gas and less use on natural resources, and also favorable for zero tailpipe emissions and noise pollution. However, this is kind of a misconception because there are wheel-to-well emissions that do exist. This means that the electricity has to be produced from somewhere, and the cheapest means of doing that, and the dirtiest, is coal. There are other processes which other industries can take to make this whole process green, and that's through wind, solar, and hydroelectric processing. The electric vehicle technology is basically everyday technology integrated into the system. It consists of a lithium battery, which has a cathode and a graphite anode that has about 80 to 90% discharge recharge rate, versus the gasoline engine, which is approximately about a 30% efficiency rate. The life cycle, however, is very short on the batteries, and they last about 10 years. So, as we still see it, this technology is still being developed. Currently, the highest miles per charge is 244 miles, and that's by the Tesla Roadster. And currently, the charge costs about $2, but future costs are going to run about 2 cents per mile. This is a slide real quick just showing you some of the mileage between the hybrid vehicles and strictly electric. As you see, technology is still developing. Hybrid vehicles, as we see here, the Chevy Volt is about 640 and the Tesla Roadster 244, and as I said earlier, that the hybrid can get the most mileage out of the car at any given time because it can switch between gas and electricity. The electronic trend, basically, as I said earlier, the future is now, however, it's not quite yet realized, is because we do see future technology in current day vehicles such as the hybrid. The hybrid is basically a transitioning technology and things that we'll see in the next 10 to 20 years. The electronic system is very low in the experience curve and is still needs much more research and development. The electric technology is going to be cheaper through mass production in the hybrid vehicles, and as costs do get brought down, that will also bring down the cost of electric vehicles. Also, gas will force the trend for people to switch over from hybrid to electric vehicles because, as we see now, gas is really exorbitantly high, and people will want to seek another alternative technology to be able to reduce costs. Infrastructure, the future, as we see, Organizations already tried looking into the hydrogen fuel. That really didn't work out as well as people expected. Organizations were trying to build strictly hydrogen stations. That would, in essence, be a very costly overhaul in the infrastructure, and is really an inefficient way of handling it. As far as the plug-in stations would go, it would be easily implemented into gas stations due to having technology available to the everyday consumer, and that same technology could be integrated into the gas stations that we have today. Also, wireless plug-in will be option in the next 10 to 20 years because people will want to reduce the eyesore of having plug-ins all along their sidewalks and in parking garages and such. Next up will be Joanne presenting the social cultural values.
Reducing emissions will positively affect our environment, health, and finances. The more electric vehicles used will help reduce emissions and pollution because there are only 10,500 power plants to be monitored and maintained versus 100 million automobiles today. According to J.D. Power, consumers will pay more for cars with environmental friendly features. Being healthy and safe are growing to become more important to consumers today. In recent studies, scientists have proved that the gas emissions have been linked to deaths, respiratory illnesses, and asthma. When the carbon monoxide is released from the gas emissions, it is absorbed and breathed in to your blood system, and it attaches to your blood cells. When it attaches to your blood cells, it blocks the oxygen from binding to your blood cells, which then cause an overproduction of carbon monoxide and can cause death. By using electric and hybrid vehicles, we would be reducing emissions and breathing in cleaner air. The emissions will be reduced by 36%. Scientists have proved that plug-in hybrids will get cleaner as they get older versus gasoline cars that get worse as they get older. When using a plug-in hybrid, you are already minimizing the greenhouse gases by 37%. When you live in a big city, most of the time you won't ever use your gas if you're driving a hybrid vehicle. You can travel up to 100 miles on the battery before your gas will kick in. By using electricity first and not having the gas as the option, it'll reduce the emissions. The plug-in hybrid is the interim for the electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are going to be the mainstream of vehicles in the next decade due to the increase in battery technology. More and more consumers are willing to pay more for eco-friendly vehicles, especially since the vehicles will pay for itself in 5 years. The battery life increases as the technology goes. The well-to-wheel emissions are lower in the gasoline. There's no tailpipes in electric vehicles. And the battery in electric vehicle cars emit 67% lower greenhouse gases than gasoline. Electric vehicles are estimated to have 35% of the car market by 2025. 10% are electric, and 25% will be hybrid, due to the fact that the hybrid is an interim of electric vehicles. The government also gives incentives to help people choose more eco-friendly choices. The government will pay up to $7,500 if you qualify by these following points. Your vehicle must have be a new plug-in electric drive motor using a traction battery with at least 4 kilowatt hours of capacity, uses an external source for recharging the battery, as Richard stated, the brake system. The gross weight of the vehicle is 14,000 pounds and meets specified emission standards. The sales trend shows people are more willing to buy more eco-friendly vehicles by 2020. This is a chart that proves that the sales trend of electric vehicles are increasing and are becoming a main concern to consumers by 2020. This dark blue line indicates that the West Coast will start the trend and show that it's increasing by 2020, and the rest of the U.S. will also increase by purchasing electric vehicles because of the trend and the way that it's affecting the environment. This is also another trend to show that studies between optimistic and pessimistic studies of where the electric vehicles are really going, the worst side of it and the best side of it. Even on the worst side of it, it shows that the pessimistic view is still increasing by 2020 and eventually 2040. And this is the optimistic studies proving that the trends of sales for electric vehicles are increasing to consumers today because surveys have proved that consumers are willing to pay more for electric vehicles and eco-friendly features. And now we have Sebastian with how electric vehicles affect the economy.
Hello, I will be talking about the economic aspect of the industry. In the recent years, the industry suffered a huge economic collapse created by the global recession. As a result of this, some companies had big declines in the sales of vehicles. Some companies needed to lay off employees, and others even needed to file for bankruptcy. This is not the only challenge that the industry is facing, but also challenges from the market. With the prices of gasoline going up too high, there is the demand from customers of better forms of fuel efficiency, and there is the environmental aspect of reduced emissions. So how is the industry going to overcome this collapse, and what changes will be there in the future? Okay. With the collapse of the industry and looking towards the future, they will be facing a two-tier market, which comes from the developed countries and developing countries and emerging markets. In the developed countries, they're implementing the mobility service solutions. This is a term used in the industry to describe emerging business models in which single or multiple providers offer the consumer a comprehensive transportation solution that may employ short-term renting of a vehicle or getting the consumer from point A to point B in a cost-effective and efficient manner. Another way for the industry to improve economically on the developed countries is to take control over the charging stations for the hybrid and electric vehicles, and also to implement safety to gain a competitive advantage. In the emerging markets, some countries don't have the economic capacity to afford the technology that is present in electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. For this, the industry will need to keep producing internal combustion engines, but they will be required to have very low levels of emissions, and they will need to be very fuel effective vehicles. Also, trying to keep up with the demands of the markets, the company could be facing overcapacity, but exports to other countries could be a way to get rid of it. Another trend towards the future of the industry are the joint ventures between stakeholders. Joint ventures between stakeholders are a very good way of reducing risk and share costs between companies in the industry, and with all the improvements in technology that keep coming up, the joint ventures will be a very good way of shared technological know-how and knowledge to keep improving the electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles.
Under the Clean Air Act, the EPA states that the national ambient air quality standards should be set for widespread pollutants from numerous sources considered harmful to public health and the environment. The EPA determines standards by placing them into primary and secondary categories. primary categories include factors that affect people directly, such as elderly people and children. And the secondary standards are things that affect the public, such as buildings, vegetation, and food. The EPA has also volunteered into Clean Diesel Technologies, which calls for emissions reductions on diesel engines by funding products that would help reduce emissions in the air. The EPA does this by giving grants to companies and organizations by helping them fund tractors and trailers that will help reduce the emissions. The EPA would also like regular citizens to get involved by creating the Green Vehicle Guide. This guide allows anyone to go onto their website, type in the car's year, make, and model, and see how big of an emissions footprint you have. There are numerous countries that debate what lengths emissions regulations should go. Many have called for a global standard, but countries deal with different issues. Countries such as Japan or China, which are experiencing tremendous economic growth, need to have tighter emissions laws since the country is becoming so vast and more automobiles are being introduced. The European Union has a standard for over 24 countries, including Italy, France, Germany, etc. According to the European Union, currently vehicles under the Euro 5 law are allowed 5 milligrams per kilometer of particulate matter. Nitrogen oxide emissions are reduced to 180 milligrams per kilometer for diesel cars and 60 milligrams per kilometer for patrol cars, which reduces the previous Euro 4 emission standards by 80%. Russia is behind and currently operating on the Euro 4 standard and is not slated to change until 2015. Japan is known to be stricter on their emissions laws and is changing the way cars are manufactured, which gives them the leading edge on emissions reduction. Japan's most current numbers are 0.63 kilograms of carbon dioxide and 0.08 grams per kilogram of nitrogen oxide, which is far less than the European Union. China will not begin the European standards until 2012. They're currently on 4 with Russia. And the problem with having so many different global standards is that people are getting a different quality of life, and car manufacturers have to change per country. According to BBC Health, a Dutch study of 632 children from 7 to 11 years old found that respiratory disorders worsened as air pollution increased, and a longer-term study of older Dutch residents published in 2009 found that illness due to lung disorders increased in high areas of high nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter associated with exhaust. Legislation that is in progress is the EPA looking to change standards from 2017 and beyond by meeting with dozens of organizations and car manufacturers to further reduce emissions. The law is planned to be ruled on July 31st, 2012. As far as improving global standards, at 1.9 tons per person, India ranks 140th worldwide in terms of annual per capita greenhouse emissions, which is 66% below the average. The legislative side as emissions as a whole needs to have top countries meet together to determine a worldwide standard and forecast possible trends into the future. Also, laws should not only be passed just to benefit a certain company or politician. In the future, the welfare of the people should be first and foremost to reduce emissions even more. Instead of recommending for each specific sector, we actually did a recommendation for the automobile industry as a whole. And by focusing on producing more electric vehicles and giving incentives to customers to purchase vehicles, we will decrease greenhouse gas emissions and open the market for new partnership and values. Reducing the emissions will increase the quality of health for each person. The trends show that people are more willing to buy environmentally friendly products, even at a premium price. We recommend starting to build the industry's infrastructure by implementing plug-in technologies at gas stations and building technology that is universal between all automobile companies so that you can produce a mass production and reduce the cost of the parts. We included an education video which shows where electric and hybrid cars are headed.
Then again, what if everything didn't? The 100% electric, zero gas Nissan Leaf. Innovation for the planet, innovation for all.
And as you can see, that's where the future of electric cars are headed. We're never-ending possibilities, and that was our presentation on automobile emissions.